Hi, I'm Michelle Ratton Sanchez, Professor of International Economic Law here at FGV Law School, and I'm here to introduce you to Paolo Galizzi, that's our visiting professor for a week at Direito GV. Paolo Galizzi is from Fordham Law School. He's a professor of clinical law there, and I would like first to welcome here at FGV in Brazil. And even I'd like first to start asking you, he's teaching international law of development, maybe asking him about how to link clinical teaching and international law of development. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, one of the things that we do is to try to give students that learn about international law of development an experience, a real experience of the challenges and the complications that sometimes arise when working on development issues. So the clinic that I teach back at Fordham tries to combine the theory of law and development and the practice. So the students work with counterparts in developing countries, mainly in West Africa. They design a project, and then once the project has been designed, they try to implement the project so that they get a sense of what needs to be put into working on a development idea and making it a concrete, realized project.
We have a Master of Law and Development at FGV, and it would be great to hear from you. What are you calling as international law of development?
I think, there are different ideas on what international law of development is, and there are some that think in traditional terms and think that it really is mostly about international economic law and how economic theories are applied to promote development and what role the legal system can play in that respect. There are others that think that international law of development encompasses a little bit more than that, for example, it encompasses human rights, environmental issues, sustainable development. So it really is looking at all the different aspects of the international legal system that contribute to the promotion of social, economic, and political development.
Based on your teaching program, it seems that you are more a human-based, rights-based approach on international law of development. What do you think is the type of impact in how to select the topics for the students? What is the focus of your classes then?
You're correct, yes. I think if I had to subscribe to a particular view of how the legal system can promote development and what kind of development I think we should be strive toward, I would say that it is a human rights centered development, a human rights approach to development. And the idea is that you want to use the legal system, and particularly the international human rights system, as the guiding lens to promote development. So you want to make sure that, for example, every member of society is included in development. Everybody, vulnerable groups in particular, are given more attention to ensure that their needs are taken into consideration. You want to ensure that the gaps that exist very often in development policies are not as huge as they currently are. So yes, the idea is to use human rights as a lens towards the promotion of development.
Good. Could you please give us maybe an example of a case that you worked with your students and then you thought about how all the concepts of international law of development came out?
Right. For example, you may have a development project that is focusing on education, and the idea is that educated people can hopefully contribute better to their own development and development of their own societies and countries. But a traditional approach may simply look at the number of people that are in school, what they learn. It doesn't really look at who these people are. A human rights centered approach to development will make sure that, for example, gender equality is considered when developing a particular policy. It will look at vulnerable groups, it will look at disabled people and making sure that education is accessible to that as well. So again, the idea is that you think about a development policy, a development idea, and then you use the human rights system to make sure that women are as represented as men, that disabled people are taken into consideration and their needs are taken into consideration. And with students, we discuss the different ways in which this particular methodology can actually work.
And do you have you ever worked with an example in Brazil or Latin America that would be closer to us?
Well, one of the things that most of my work has been in Africa, and particularly in West Africa. So we have a lot of specific projects that we've been working on in West Africa. I have done other kind of work in Latin America, particularly in Colombia, on, for instance, pro bono and access to justice. But I would say that most of the development work that I have actually done, it really is in West Africa.
And just to focus a little bit on theory and on the formal aspects of what we are calling here as international law of development, is it possible to talk about sources of international law of development?
They are very much the same as for international law. In fact, international law of development really is a subset of the broader international legal system. It's very much like international environmental law, international economic law. The sources are customary rules and treaties, and I would say in our field, one of the most important sources really is soft law. So all the declaration and the soft law instruments that states and other stakeholders adopt to promote this idea of development. So I would say there are a few customary rules, there are some treaties in this field, but a huge number of instruments are soft law instruments.
And have you ever faced the critic of relativism or versus universalism in this type of approach of international law of development?
Yes, I think when the idea of development itself is different for different people. I mean, there is not one model of development that should be promoted, and my personal view is that I shouldn't decide what development means in a particular context. It really is very much up to the people in a particular country, up to a particular group of individuals to decide what development means to them. Our role is to then say these are the possible legal tools that are available to you to reach the goal that you set yourself. And there are different tools that are available, and then it's up to them to decide which tool works to get to the idea of development that they have. Clearly, as far as I'm concerned, my personal view is that development means very much what the Universal Declaration on Human Rights says, that is a development that goes in a certain direction. Having said that, I really want to stress that it really is not for me to decide what development means in a particular context. I can offer ideas, I can offer tools, but then it is for the people themselves to choose what development means to them in a particular context.
In Brazil, we have a lot of work concerning development that is very much attached to the idea of the state. I would like to hear from you a little bit about the role that you think for the state, as it seems to me that you're talking about a right to development of people.
Yeah.
So what is the role of the state combining this relationship of the individual versus the international system?
Yeah, I would say that the right to development is both a collective and an individual right, in the sense that to achieve development as an individual you need collective action, but the collective action should never lose sight that the ultimate goal is the development of individuals to their fullest potential. And what I would say is that the state has a role to play, but in my personal view, it is just one of the many actors and stakeholders involved in the development process. Individuals play a role, non-governmental organizations play a role, international organizations, multinational corporations. These days, the era where the state does everything and is responsible for everything and has all the answers, if it ever existed, I think has long been over. Development is a process, and it's a process that involves the participation of everybody and every entity. Some things the state needs to do, other things may be better left to individuals, others again may be better left to international organizations and others to multinational corporations. And all of those entities really need to work together to achieve the final goal, which is individual development and collective development, where societies essentially are better tomorrow than what we found them to be today. And what that better means, it really is up to each society and each individual to decide.
And what about the role of international institutions in these cases? Thinking about completely different types of institutions that we have today in the international arena, like Inter-American Human Rights Court, and then on the other side, other institutions like trying to define the policies of the state, like the World Bank, the WTO. What are the different types of organizations that we find in their role in this promotion of international law?
Right. At the global level, there are several organizations that are involved in promoting development and working with states to achieve that goal. Obviously, the United Nations is one of the most important organizations when it comes to this field, and the UN has been promoted the development agenda since its inception. It's one of the main goals of this organization, and for example, through the Millennium Development Goals, they've tried to achieve certain objectives by 2015. Now, within the UN system, there is a move towards what are going to be called Sustainable Development Goals. So that's one set of activities that goes on within the UN system. There are other institutions very prominent in this field at the global level. You mentioned the World Bank, you mentioned the World Trade Organization. There are others that are pretty important as well at more of a regional level, the OECD, for example, and then you mentioned some of the other regional institutions. There are maybe sometimes competing goals and competing agendas, and that it's the international level, then of course there are competing agendas at the national level. And a lot of it is because the idea of development is different for different people. You know, does it mean that you want people to have more disposable income? You want to focus on economic growth? Is that what development means? Or do you want to focus on a more equal society, and therefore development may actually mean redistributing resources to have a more just society? So these institutions at the global level are run by people and by states, and sometimes the agendas may appear conflicted or confused.
And do you have any suggestion or recommendation for students that would like to follow the track of career on international law of development?
I would say people that choose to work in this field need to be very humble and very open-minded. I think that they need to be open to learn, and they need to be open to listen and to explore what other people think. And the other thing, that they need to be very adventurous. They need to be prepared to live in different parts of the world and get a lot of experience on the ground. I think it's very important that people learn about what the rules are, but then it's as important for them to just get on the ground, work in the field, to get a lot of practical experience, to see what this is all about.
And well, my last question would be the specific role of lawyer in this field.
I think that law plays a role in the promotion of development. The rule of law is one of the ingredients, if you wish, for societies to be able to fully develop whichever the model of development it is that they want to achieve. It is not the only tool, but there clearly is a role for lawyers as well. A legal system that works, that provides certainty, guarantees, is indispensable for individuals and societies as a whole to develop. The protection and promotion of human rights, which is something that lawyers are seriously involved in, is again equally important to allow individuals to develop their creativity. I mean, if you have to worry constantly about your rights being taken away from you, then you probably don't spend so much time creating new companies, job opportunities, and so on and so forth. So law is one of the tools. I think, development is complex, and I think it's interdisciplinary. There are different players that need to sit at the table to make it happen, and I think we are one of the players. We're not the only one. We probably are not the crucial one in all circumstances, but we are an essential one. I think, in my view, there is no development without the rule of law. The rule of law and lawyers are essential. They're not the only tool.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much,
Thank
Paolo,
you
for your time.
Thank you
for your talk.
Thank you for having me. Okay.